Okay, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Live with Caroline Stevens, Stepping Stones to Awareness. Once again, we join Gordon Bowden, who will talk to Caroline about combat stress and the Falklands. Standing by. You're live.
Welcome to a Stepping Stones to Awareness show. I'm Caroline Stevens. Today I'm speaking to Gordon Bowden from Derbyshire. Gordon, you remember, he's a specialist, an investigator on shell companies, and today he talks to us about combat stress. Welcome, Gordon. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. Can you firstly explain to our audience what a shell company actually is, please?
Yeah, thank you, Caroline. Thanks for the invite. Shell companies. Normally, a company that's registered through Companies House specifically must list its address, the directors, their ages, and other companies that they're directors of. However, much of 17 years of my research, I've found out there are gaps within the due diligence of the FCA and Companies House to identify and red flag companies which are director-only companies which operate multi-million pound oil, gas and mining companies. And that's where I'll come into it via the Falklands in respect to Gus Hayes.
So let me just talk that through. Basically, these are limited companies. So limited companies actually have to register at Companies House.
Correct.
And they have to presumably produce sets of accounts.
Not necessarily. They could be unaudited accounts. And what I've specifically seen is that there is a distinct threat to this country by the subsidiary of the main London Stock Exchange. And that's a derivative, a lightly regulated spin-off from the London Stock Exchange, and that's called the Alternative Investment Market. It's been renamed to the AIM, obviously Alternative Investment Market. And there it is lightly regulated, and since its inception, it's become a casino. It's a casino for an international network of I would call nefarious activities of companies with exotic names who purport to search and explore oil, gas and mining licenses. And that's where my research specializes in order to protect investors who place their faith and trust in the Financial Conduct Authority and the Serious Fraud Office and regional police forces where these companies are registered with their directors.
Right, so you were drawn to an organisation called Combat Stress. I've noticed Combat Stress recently on Facebook. We've had people stood outside, and we've actually now got Gus, who's doing he's conducting a hunger strike outside, and he's been going for, is it 10 or 11 days now? So what's all that about then?
Well, it's because I believe 3.2 million was withdrawn by the NHS to support combat stress, specifically the centre where Gus is doing his hunger strike. I did go to visit him last Monday and had a little chat with him and a lot of his supporters, ex-military men, to whom we are one family, regardless of Navy, Army or Air Force or any of the other services who served in combat. So I became reasonably interested in understanding how the NHS, short of cash, as we all know, have withdrawn this 3.2 million. So doing what I do, I tended to look into the organization of combat stress. And what I found is that, I found out a lot of things which I'll hold personal for the time being, because this is an ongoing research project for Pandora's Box Investigations Limited.
So basically, who is actually, you said the taxpayers are actually paying 3.2 million from the NHS budget, and it's been redirected to combat stress. Yes. And from what I've seen on what I've seen on Facebook is that they've got 24 beds in the place, and nobody is using any of those beds at the moment. How's that happening?
Well, I believe because the £3.2 million that was withdrawn represents the ability to give the patients an ability to be in residence, and they won't have that money to support that, either by the infrastructure of staff or medication or etc. As I said, this is an ongoing research project for myself and the company, is to look at the financials and the corporate formation of combat stress. And with my ability of looking at companies through Companies House, combat stress operates under multiple ID numbers, company ID numbers. Some of them are inactive. And that's where the research needs to be extended to understand the mechanics of how these companies, Combat Stress and its spin-offs like Combat Stress Holdings Limited, actually work and what their declared financials are.
Right. Okay then. So have we got any names? Can we name any names, or is it just still under investigation?
This is still under investigation, but I have found a specific registered director where in the latest publications of their leadership and their executives and their patrons, I found one director who was a doctor who formed, well, he's not registered on Combat Stress as a director, and yet the press release and the internet coverage of Combat Stress says he is a director. Now, as I said, I found the one director. He's listed as a director on the internet archive of Combat Stress, and he formed two companies with his wife, one of which comes out to that famous address.
Finchley Road, by any chance?
Unfortunately, yes.
So how many other places are there, accommodations for combat stress are there in the country, do you know?
Oh, they're doing a terrific job for the veterans who suffer from PTSD. I can't decry that. However, when there's a shortfall to support Gus's case in that particular orderly court in Newport in Shropshire, then I've got as my duty of care, if I see anything that looks a bit suspicious within the financials and the corporate administration, I will look a little deeper. And that's what I've become quite good at in exposing billion-pound organised crime.
Can you explain to the audience at home what is Gus's case? Can you give me a bit of background since you met him a week ago?
Yeah, apparently he was visited by a combat stress administrator who asked him to update his details and to be interviewed, etc. And he said, "Who are you?" And it ended up where the gentleman walked away, and then Gus found out that they discharged him from their care. And he's gone on for 2 years without any sort of care. And I really admire what he's doing today to bring this to light in the major media.
It seems a terrible shame when we've seen so much in the news about veterans and how they're treated and the number of people that are homeless. And yet, if the records are correct, there's nobody in that property at the moment, with 24 beds going begging. Exactly.
And my own personal walk around Derby, I've found and spoken to Falklands veterans who are lying on cardboard in doorways or looking for some assistance for food, etc. It's a total disgrace, total disgrace.
And of course,
I will do what I can as a veteran to highlight this and maybe give those who support Gus an alternative idea of where money is being siphoned off. And that's what I'm trying to... I'll stand by Gus and his cause and not make this a political agenda, if you understand.
Yes, I mean he's prepared to still sit outside, sit down as he says, and
Yeah.
he's not prepared to stand down at the minute. He's probably a little bit weaker with having no food for 11 days, but he's standing firm, so that's great, or even sitting firm.
Exactly, and say understanding. You can't do without liquid.
No.
Say I was a highly trained first aider in evacuation and triaging, so I studied quite well with doctors to be a team leader in a medical team when I worked for Goldfields of South Africa. So with Gus's condition, obviously he's weakening because he's not getting the sustenance and the proteins normally that you would get with high carbohydrates. And I know that from being a type 2 diabetic.
Well, as I say, it's a good example of how our veterans are treated, and I hope that this video today will bring greater awareness and also scrutiny of the NHS. They say there's no money for the NHS, but the money seems to be going to places where, is it required, or it's going to shell companies? Who knows? We need more scrutiny, don't we?
Yes, we need more scrutiny, and I brought this to your attention with a certain ex-Prime Minister, Tony Blair, with his company called Windrush Ventures, and we mentioned that. This is not going on a political agenda. This is just purely company records. And he moved his company, which he is attributable to being in control of, Windrush Ventures Limited, out of that famous Finchley abandoned address, and moved it to 50 Broadway. And if you click on 50 Broadway and put NHS in the same search engine, you will come up with 3 NHS companies. And I find that amazing. You understand? Is that
right? Okay.
Scrutiny on the 3 NHS companies that come out of 50 Broadway, to which is the same forwarding address of Windrush Ventures, which is attributable to being a shell company for Right Honourable ex-Prime Minister Tony Blair.
And of course, you know, it doesn't matter which side of the political spectrum you sit in the House of Commons and the House of Lords. There's no doubt about it. The aim is to privatise the NHS.
I think that would be the biggest mistake this country has ever made. It will leave it open to being cash gutted by various individuals who will see it as an open casino. And as I said to you, the AIM, or the Alternative Investment Market, as it was renamed to AIM, is seen by the American SEC as a casino. And they've identified the direct threats posed to the financial industry, insurance, pension funds, and others, who can be seen to be investing in these oil, gas, and mining companies, which end up losing billions.
So we're saying then that basically people's pension funds are actually dependent on all these shell companies, and the plug could be pulled at any minute.
The way I've understood with my research is that these oil, gas and mining companies, exploration companies, to which I've been investigating since 2006 when returning from South Africa, is that when you check what they call their AIM Admission to Trade Rule 26 document, which is a document that they have to file with Companies House, which shows the full corporate documentation and data, is that when I've looked deeply, and I have, as you understand, my library, which is vast, on all these companies, is that you can see that there's a lot of people involved there within the insurance industry, and that will include individuals in the pension industries. So, yeah, it's a den of iniquity, I found, and it needs to be investigated by not just a government organization, but an NGO I've offered my services to show how these companies are losing billions, hundreds of billions, which is being siphoned out of pension funds.
It's interesting that you mention an insurance company being involved, but I've been sort of campaigning to give greater awareness to the fact that we've got EU military unification. And when you look at the network of people who are involved in government scrutiny committees, insurance companies are involved somehow there as well. It's like tentacles of an octopus.
I think David Cameron, when he went to Malaya, he went there to appease or to explain how shell companies are using dirty money in the City of London to buy property to the value of billions. Now, David Cameron only skirted on the idea of these dirty companies and criminal companies money laundering using organised crime money to purchase property in the United Kingdom. I, on the other hand, have found the facilitators. I know them all. So when you steal money, I said, all you need is one of these. However, the complicated part is moving it. And to do that, you need complicit auditors, accountants, lawyers, and bankers who facilitate the dirty money routing. And since 2002, I have formulated a blueprint on all the companies' addresses who are facilitating the movement of that dirty money. Now, when I approach certain politicians and I've said, look, I've got no political agenda. I can see the dirty side, and I am fully aware of those addresses who are the facilitators. And they need, not like somebody where they call 999 for somebody that's shoplifting and send a squad car with his Nina going and the blue lights. I'm trying to help my country understand where billions is being silted out to the places like Panama, British Virgin Islands, Barbados, Limassol.
Does it go to Belize?
Pardon?
Does it go to Belize?
Of course. These people have formulated this blueprint in order with experts who are boiler room experts in how to structure the conduiting of the stolen money. Now, the people I have found who are directors of these oil, gas and mining companies, when you check the company's house records of each individual director, you will find out that these individual directors, using multiple director ID numbers, have formed multiple companies that have all gone bang. Now, if you were £20 in debt with your bank and you were doing this on a regular basis, you would be called into your bank by an administrator who would ask you for your credit card, and they would cut it up. I'm talking about billions, hundreds of billions, and nobody cares. Nobody cares.
But isn't it funny that you've got so many MPs that want 0 hours contracts, but then they make the money out of the City of London? I mean, this is why we've got broken Britain, surely.
Yes, I mean, when you can see individual companies who are, as I can put it, losing hundreds of millions throughout the course of their registration, where's the red flag? Who is the due diligence authority who are not calling these people up and doing an investigation into individual directors who change their name, which is a criminal offence? Make no mistake, in companies' house records, if you're a director, you must give your birth name. And what I have found out over 17 years is that these people are very crafty. They slightly alter their name, even to put in a hyphen, Mr., changing their middle name around to being the Christian name. And these people have got away with it.
I never knew that. So they have to give their birth name. So even if they've changed their name by deed poll, they can't use that name.
Well, as I've seen it, and I've found, forensically found, that these directors, they're extracting the urine out of us because they can see the flaws within the mechanisms by the Financial Conduct Authority, and they can see how they can steal billions. And my point is that I've identified these companies. I've confronted them. I've confronted their directors. And trust me, as I said, they've threatened me. But as I said, I'm a bit too long in the tooth to take threats like this. And I've got all the information. It's on terabyte hard drives. It's held by other people. I don't even mention to anybody. And they're ex-servicemen. And trust me, anything happened to myself, my family, or my friends or co-directors of Pandora's Box, there will be a lot of politicians who will be brought before an inquiry and sent to jail.
I think what we're talking about today is a prime example when people say, what does it matter where politicians get their money from? It's a drain on our national resources. You know, the NHS, and it's the poor people that are suffering. And it's your pension schemes. Your pension scheme out there will be impacted at some point.
I've tried to engage with police officers as I've gone around trying to do a bit of research. And they would have no understanding how a pension fund of a government pension can be used to make shares in an oil, gas and mining company in the belief that the penny stock shares will then make the pension fund billions. But it doesn't work that way. It's a one-way draw on the pension fund, and that money gets silted out. Much the same as the collapse of, the debt funded by RBS, Royal Bank of Scotland.
Yeah.
I have found myself with Sir Steve Robson that the executives who were all booted off RBS, nobody made comment on how RBS loaned certain oil, gas and mining companies hundreds of millions, and then it was written off as toxic debt. So, as I said, I have my own agenda. On Sunday, I will honour Gus and the people to whom I served and past fallen victims and constant sufferers of post-traumatic stress disorder. I'm not going to make this a political trip. This is purely to honour Gus and his struggle and to try to bring attention to anybody within the military who suffers from post-traumatic stress, is to try to get those people help. That's my duty. If I can see something wrong where it's basically formed around the lack of money, I will offer my services to anybody that wants to understand where we can get that money. And if it's dirty money, then it's the proceeds of crime. And that money then gets recovered by the state and then can be put into institutions like the NHS to fund orderly court and the combat stress. That's what I'm saying. Anybody who wants to query the corporates that I have named and the directors is more than willing. I'm more than willing for them to come and see the evidence themselves. It's all in black and white, and it's through Companies House. There's no better forensic document to show how money gets moved all over the world to various common directors in Vancouver, Australia, in South Africa, and that money is silted out of parent companies, as I've explained. But with the Falkland Islands, to which Gus is a veteran, my research came across 5 companies which used a common oil rig called the Ocean Guardian. And it was my understanding of where the Ocean Guardian ownership lay, because I did a full dismantlement of its history as an submersible oil rig, is that I found out it was George W.H. Bush and his Jeb Bush. Now, talk about Operation Zapata, which was Oliver North and his crew. You'll get to the political side, trust me.
I thought Oliver North was a good guy.
Did you? Oh. Okay.
Right, so Santa Claus doesn't exist anymore.
Well, not since I saw my father bringing a bicycle out the loft, no.
And of course, we're talking about PTSD, We've got Mark Steele up in Gateshead area, you know, campaigning vehemently against the rollout of 5G, and the rollout of 5G will mean that more people will be suffering from EMFs, the PTSD fallout.
Did you see on the news recently concerning Gus Hales? They were on Good Morning on the TV. There were the Speakmans, the husband and wife team, who claim that they can cure PTSD. And I would like to see some form of expose by these to the Speakmans to aid and assist centres like Combat Stress to utilise their expertise in helping people like Gus and all the other PTSD sufferers. They claim that they can cure it. So what better way to get an offer from somebody, from a husband and wife team who have had, watching them on the television, they've had great success in various, mental illnesses and affiliations like fear of heights, fear of frogs, it doesn't matter, snakes. They have an incredible success rate.
Wow. I wonder what Big Pharma would have to say about that.
Well, exactly. When I joined, 6th of October 1969, on completion of my 6 weeks basic training at Swinderby, they gave us, I think it was 9 injections. I don't know what was in them, in the thigh, in the left and right arm, and then they wanted us to go on a 5-mile run. Well, most of the people didn't even make the door. So,
no.
Yeah, they were falling all over the place. I had to help quite a few people put them in their bunks. We have no idea what they pumped into us. It'll probably be
well, that takes us into another area altogether, doesn't it? The validity of vaccines. What do they pump into our children?
I'm still here. I'm 66, so whatever it was, look at me. I'm like a 25-year-old, aren't I? So.
Well, Gordon, thank you so much for speaking to Stepping Stones to Awareness today. And I wish you well for the weekend. And please send our best wishes to Gus and all his comrades.
I will do.
Thank you. And thank you to everybody at home for listening. And we will have another show very shortly. So stay tuned. Take care. Goodbye for now.